Okay. Good morning. The Gemara today, we're sort of getting into without a plan, because we're gonna get stuck somewhere in the middle, and then we'll have to go back over where we were holding and then go further. Okay. I have to get a chumash before we start, but we're gonna start on top of Samach Gimel Amud Beis. Tanan Hassan. Let me go get a chumash. Okay. Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day, and in this chus of learning Hashem to Beis Hamikdash. If you have a chumash there, we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at chapter 22 in Shmais. It's basically the section about a Shemer Chinam in Mishpatim. And then we'll be comparing that to some other things. Yeah. Okay, so it starts like this. Tanan Hassan. We learned in the Mishnah. Morning. I'm on Samach Gimel Amud Beis 63b. It says Heichon Pekdaini. Someone tells the Shemer, he says, "Where's my deposit? Where's the object that I gave to you to watch for me?" Amalei, he says, Avad. Says, I lost it. So what we're looking at here is that he's excusing himself with the claim that it got lost and therefore he should be exempt. So the owner of the item says, Mashpiachani, I'm administering an oath to you that you have to swear. So V'amar Amen. And he says, yes, he says Amen. That means that he's accepted on himself the oath and he's swearing that it's gotten lost and he didn't take it. However, witnesses come and tell us that it's not so. Witnesses come and tell us that it wasn't lost. He's the guy himself. Thank you. He's the guy himself that consumed it. So the rule is Mishalem es Keren. He only has to pay for it once because he's a Shemer Chinam, and he took it for himself. So he has to pay for the item. But let's say he comes to court and it's not witnesses that testified of what he did. He comes to court himself and admits. Then the rule is Mishalem Keren v'chaymish v'asham. Then he has to pay the rule of someone that swears falsely. And he brings the Karban Asham, which is called Asham Gezelis. That's someone that swears and someone that steals and swears has to pay this. It has to bring that sacrifice, and he also has to give an extra fifth, which is someone that swears falsely has to pay the extra fifth. But that's only, we're on 63b on the top, but that's only if he admits, not if witnesses testified that he's lying. All the fifths are divided by 4.
There's something about pleading the fifth.
Here he's not pleading the fifth, here he's admitting.
But
Okay.
There's no such concept though, just stay silent when you're accused of something.
Yeah.
I
think he is
means you agree.
No, not necessarily.
Anyway,
Another case. The guy says, the owner of the object says, "Where's my object that you were supposed to watch for me?" Amrullah, he says to him, instead of saying that I lost it, which was the last case, now he says, "Nignav, it got stolen." So he says, "Oh, it got stolen. You don't have it. Mashpiachani. I'm making you swear that that's what happened." Amaramin, he says, "Yes, I swear." And witnesses testify that he actually stole it. So here the price doubles, because since he claimed that it got stolen, so we put on him the laws, not of a shomer that that has to pay for the object if he loses it. You know, it's not that. We put on him the halachas of a ganav, because he claimed that it was geneva. We put on him the laws of geneva, and he has to pay double. But let's say it's not witnesses that testify, then Mishalem Karen B'Chaim Mishvasam. Then he has to pay. It's not witnesses. He admitted himself, and he has to pay the Karen B'Chaim Mishvasam. The principal, he doesn't pay double when he admits. It's only because Maida B'Knas, if someone admits, he doesn't have to pay the penalty, but he has to pay the extra fifth that comes along with the asham, with the guilt offering. That's for swearing falsely.
Monetary laws, person, they get related to something like accounts.
Yeah. If in a conflict between two people, someone says, "I owe you money," so we don't. So we accept that. It's called hidas baldin. Hidas baldin k'me'edim. I mean, it's considered like a test. That such a testimony, even though it's self-incriminating, but we do accept a testimony like that. Yeah, so there's a discussion in the if that's considered a gift, or if that's considered a rule. So okay. Nevertheless, we taught that if someone claims, a shamer that claims that what happened to the object that got stolen, the mishalem tashlum mikefel, that he has to pay double. But if he claims that it got lost, he doesn't have to pay double. It's good the Gemara summarizes these laws, because what we're about to get into is what the source of for all of these laws, and it's going to be highly complex in the verses. I'm going to go back and forth, but it doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that. I'm going to have two ways of reading it. And even when someone does claim that it got stolen from him, a shamer claims that it got stolen, so he has to pay double, but that's only that's only if he took an oath. That's when he'll have to pay double. But if he doesn't take an oath, he doesn't have to pay double. That's going to be a difference between a thief and a shamer. A thief steals, he gets caught, he has to pay double, even though he didn't swear. The shamer steals, he has to pay double only if he took an oath that he didn't steal. Then after the oath, then he would have to pay double. Otherwise, it's not considered stealing. I don't know. He doesn't have to pay double if he didn't take the oath. Where do we know these distinctions? That there's a distinction between if he claims it got lost and he stole it, and there's a distinction and the versus if he claims that it got stolen and he had really stolen it. Over there, he has to pay double. And again, that he has to that only applies to a shvua. If he took an oath, well, he have to pay double, but that doesn't apply to a ganav. That a ganav doesn't have to swear before he pays double. The Tanur Rabbanan was taught in the Brisa. The Brisa quotes the verse. The verse says in Yimatzi Aganav. Let me read it to you inside so you'll see what the Gemara is about to do here. It goes like this. If a person gives his friend money or article for safekeeping, and does not pay him for his services, this is the Moshe Miller, I think. Chaim Miller, the Chaim Miller Chumash. So he adds in, what do they call this? 5 books of Moses as well. Okay. Yeah.
I just hold it up.
Yeah, you see this? So anyway, he adds in his comment. So if a person gives his friend their money articles for safekeeping and does not pay him for his services, that means it's a shemer chinam, and they are stolen from the man's house. And then the thief is found. So the words, and then the thief is found, because it sounds like it was stolen from his house, that there is a real thief there, right? That's what it sounds like. It was stolen from his house, there's a real thief. So, im yimatzi aganav, if the thief is found, then Yishalim Shnoim, he has to pay double. Now, the Gemara is going to say that it's not necessarily so. What it really may mean is that he claimed that it was stolen, and im yimatzi aganav means we find that he was the real thief. Yishalim Shnoim, he's going to have to pay double. Those are two ways of reading that verse.
So he only gives back the original amount if he voluntarily returns it. If someone kind of busts, so to speak.
But this is only by a watchman. Yeah, okay. Right. Now, the problem is that we had two ways of reading this verse. Either there was a real thief or he claimed that it was stolen. Let's go further. If the thief is not found, the homeowner must approach the judges. This is imlo yimatzi aganav. The homeowner must approach the judges. The judges over here is called elikim. V'nikra balabais elikim. The elikim means the judges. If he is challenged by the owner to swear an oath that he has not laid his hand upon his friend's property, and then he is exempt from compensation since he was not paid for the services because he's a shomer chinam, he would be exempt. But then it goes on, and it says, in every case of dishonesty, this is the pasuk that we were learning yesterday about an ox, a donkey, a lamb, or a garment, or about any lost article. If the witnesses say this is the thing that which you swore about, thank you. Then the claims of both parties shall come to the judges, and whoever the judge declared guilty must pay twofold to his friend. So this sounds like
fine. Who receives the fine? The victim.
Yeah. The double also. Yeah. So
the double portion is the fine. And
right.
The
Sometimes the fine is the fifth, or double goes to the victim. Now, in the pasuk of him lo yimatzi aganav, if you don't find the thief, then it turns out that the guy himself is brought to court, and he ends up being the thief. He has to pay double. Okay, so let's take a look at this now. We had two pasukim. One was if you find the thief, and one was if you don't find the thief. If you don't find the thief, and then the watchman himself turns out to be the thief, he has to pay double. So but in the first one, we had two ways of understanding if you find the thief. What does it mean you find the thief? Does it mean you find the actual thief, or it means you find him that he's the thief? So the Tana Rabbi Matzi Aganav, if you find the thief, Umar says, B'tayin Tanis Ganav Akasam Medaber. It's talking about when the person claimed that it got stolen from him. And then he gets caught, he has to pay double, that it was really him. Ata, I remember B'tayin Tanis Ganav, you claim that it's talking about, not you claim. You're interpreting the verse that says if you find a thief, that is talking about someone that claimed that there was a thief, but there really wasn't. And we find out that he's the thief, and he has to pay double. How do you know it's someone that claimed that there was a thief? Maybe it's talking about when you actually find the actual thief, not that the watchman was the thief, but you actually find the thief. Because when the verse continues and it says, if you don't find the thief, that's for sure that's for sure talking about when someone claims that there was a thief and it was really he himself. So what if the second pasuk is talking about if you don't find the thief, then the first pasuk was also talking about that. That's the way this first brisa learns it. Because if you don't find, means if he gets caught.
The watchman is a thief, or another thief. They both pay twofold.
Exactly. Yeah, the answer is going to be the same. Question is, what exactly is the verse referring to? Yeah. So, the Gemara afterwards is going to ask, why do I need two verses to say exactly the same thing? If I find the thief or if I don't find the thief, both of them are talking about where it turns out that he's the thief and he has to pay double. The Gemara is going to ask, why do I need two verses to say that? But meanwhile, we're accepting that both verses are referring to someone that watchman that claims that it got stolen and turns out he's the thief. Tanidach. I have another brisa that learns this slightly different. It says, if you find the thief, that's the first verse. It's obviously talking about the actual thief. That's different than the first brisa. You say it's talking about the actual thief, that you find him that he has to pay double. Maybe it's talking about someone that claims that it got stolen and turns out that he is the thief, not that he actually stole it, but he's just keeping it for himself. So when the following verse says that if you don't find the thief and it turns out that the watchman himself is the thief, we already spoke about the guy that claims that it got stolen. So why do you have to have the first verse that says if you found the thief? Must be talking about an actual thief. So we have two ways of reading these verses. We have machlekes, what the first verse is referring to. Is it referring to someone that claims that it got stolen, or is it referring to what we actually catch someone else that's stolen? The Kuli Almamiyas, everyone agrees, both of these brises agree, that if the second verse, if you don't find the thief, and the owner takes the watchman to the court, and then he has to pay double, that's talking about B'tayin Tanas Ganav Ksiv. That's talking about when he claimed that it got stolen and turned out that it wasn't, that he had really taken it. My mashma, how do we know that? Amar Rava, so Rava says that we're going to read the verse. It says, Im lo yimatze haganav, if you don't find the thief, what it really means is, Im lo yimatze k'maisha amar, if we don't find that it's accurate what he said, Ella shu atzmei ganvei, rather he was the one himself that stole it, then Yishalim Shnayim, he has to pay double. Now the Gemara says, in the Brisa we mentioned, right, the Mishnah that we started with, we mentioned that you only have to pay double when a watchman claims that it was stolen, and then we find that he was the one that actually took it. He would only have to pay double payment if he swore that he did not take it. How do we know that that's the case? Tanya was taught in a Brisa, it says that we bring the watchman to court. Elikim means court. And that means lishvua, that means to take an oath. Gemara says, how do you know? You claim that it means to take an oath. Maybe it means that we just judge the case. How do you know that we make him take an oath? Just says judges. Elikim means judges. So nemer shlichus yad lamatav and nemer shlichus yad lamayla. If you go one paragraph more, the paragraph that we're reading is about the Shemer Chinam. But if you go one paragraph more to the Shemer Sachar, over there it says, when he claims that it died, the animal that the paid watchman claims that it died. So it says, Shvus Hashem tia bein shneim, shalach yad melachas riyayu, lakach balav le'yishalim. He has to make an oath. It says clearly he has to make an oath. So it says shlichas yad lamata. It says if someone stretches out his hand to use the item for himself, by the following case, lamata, below means on the scroll it's written, from top to bottom. So by the next case it says, but the case below it means the following case says that they have to take an oath. It also says in the previous case above by Shemer Chinam, by the unpaid watchman, says that if he stretches out his hand, just like in the second case by the Shemer Sachar, it's referring to an oath. Afghan, also by the Shemer Chinam, Lashua is talking about an oath, even though it didn't say an oath, all it said was judges. But we say that, well, over there it meant an oath, so over here it's also going to mean an oath. Okay. Now the Gemara asks the big question. According to Bryson number 2, that says that if you find the thief, first verse was referring to the actual thief. And then if you don't find the thief, it's referring to not the actual thief, but the guy that claimed that it was stolen. So fine. So then that's why I have two verses. But according to the one that says, the first brisa, that said that both verses are referring to someone that claims that it got stolen, and really he was the one that took it. Why do I need two verses to say the same thing? That's the question we were waiting for. So Amri, they said, one of those verses is coming to tell me to exclude if he said that it got lost, he doesn't have to pay double when they find it that he was the one that really kept it. and yeah.
What's the difference that he says, "Oh, it got lost"?
Wow. Wow, straight from the airport. Wow. Unbelievable. If
the woman says that it got lost.
We'll start again. Let's take it from the top.
Someone took it.
It says it got lost.
Someone took it.
We don't know what happened to it. Lost doesn't have to mean that someone took it. Lost could mean that, I don't know, misplaced.
So in that case, you would just pay it once?
Yeah, in that case, he only pays once, right?
Will they make him take an oath?
Yeah, has to take an oath as well. But even though he takes an oath, he only pays once. Yeah, it's a special halacha only if he claims that it was stolen, that we put on him the laws as if he's the thief. Even he is the thief, but he only has to do that double payment only if he claimed that it got stolen. We're talking about the shemer. We're talking about a shemer chinam that claims that it got stolen. He has to pay double as if he was a gana. But that's only if he says that it got stolen, not if it turns out he was the one that took it. Not if he claims it got lost. If he claims it got lost and he's the one that took it, he only has to pay once. And we're looking at the verses that says im himatzei aganav yishalem shnayim, and then it says im lo yimatzei aganav, and it turns out that he's the thief. Then yishalem shnayim, he has to pay double.
Most of
Yitzi says Shemais 22. Okay. So according to
just get it right.
Actually 8 is coming up, but this is 6 and 7.
Okay,
So one is Chadamuti Tainas Avad. So one of the verses is coming to tell me that to exclude if he claims that it got lost, that he doesn't have to pay double. Okay, fine. Amar Chad Beganav Chad B'Tainas Tainas Ganav D'Loi Miyaser Lamuti Tainas Avad Minole. What does the other fellow do? The other brisa. Brisa number 2. Brisa number 2 says, the first one is teaching me that a ganav has to pay double, the first verse. Second verse is teaching me that a tayan tanas ganav, someone that claims that it got stolen, has to pay double. How does he know to exclude the guy that claims that it got lost, that he does not have to pay double? If both verses were saying the same thing, I could say that one is extra and teaching me to exclude that. So the Gemara says, mi ganav haganav. It didn't have to say haganav, so it could have said ganav.
Right.
That extra hey. The way that it says it is coming to teach me. What is the other brisa, the first brisa, that has a whole extra verse that learns that it's excluding tayin tanas avad if he claims that it got lost? What does he do with that verse of ganav haganav, that when it says haganav? Malach, he says, and I need it for something else. What Reb Chia bar Abba says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Reb Chia bar Abba and Rabbi Yechanan. Reb Chia bar Abba says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. We had this before, when we started the parak. It says a tayin tanas ganav b'pikad, and if someone claims that the object that he was watching got lost, it got stolen, that Mishalem Tashlum Mikeveli has to pay double. But then it goes on, that we knew already. Then it goes on, and it says that if it was an ox or a lamb, and he slaughtered it and sold it, that the watchman is going to have to pay 4 or 5 times the price of the item, because he had kept it for himself, plus he had sold it or slaughtered it. Now, what we just did was where did we get this from? We got this from Haganav. According to the opinion that doesn't need Haganav. According to the other opinion that says one is telling me about a ganav, one verse, the first verse, in Yimatzei Ganav. Second verse is telling me Tayan Tanas Ganav, Imlo Yamatzei Ganav. And then from the verse Ganav, from the word Haganav, it's coming to teach me to exclude that if he claims that it got lost, that he doesn't have to pay kefil. Where does he know this halacha of Reb Chia Barabba that sometimes you may have to end up paying 4 or 5 times? That the previous brisa got from Ganav Haganav. Amalach, he says, Ekeshahu. Says, I know that already because it's juxtaposed in the verses, Vein Mishivan Al Hekesh. And you can't ask a question on me because since a regular Ganav has to pay 4 or 5 times, where did it say that? It says, that's the last verse of Shmais 21. Shmais 22 starts telling me about other thieves paying double, and then it says about a fire they have to pay, and then it goes to the Shemachinam. So since it talks about kefel and double payment and 4 or 5 times right next to by a regular ganav, right next to the Shemachinam, so that's coming to tell me that juxtaposition is coming to tell me that he automatically has to pay 4 or 5 times if he claims that it got stolen. Now you could ask a question on that. 1 second, he only has to pay double and 4 or 5 times if it got. He only has to pay double if he swears that it got stolen, that it was stolen, and turns out he's a liar. By a regular ganav, he has to pay double and 4 or 5 times, even if he doesn't swear. For that, the Gemara says, "In mishivan ala hekesh." Can't ask any questions on juxtaposition. It's put right next to it.
5 times there's only sheep or ox that's slaughtered
or sold. Yeah. Okay. Now the Gemara says, according to that opinion, that says that one verse is talking about if someone steals it, he has to pay double. Other verse is telling me someone that claims that it got stolen, he has to pay double. But according to the one that says that both verses are telling me so the question is, how do we know that a regular person has to pay double? Now we have a verse that says this. The only problem is that verse is only talking about, it seems to only be talking about animals. How do we know that he has to pay double on everything? So the Gemara says, we say, well, let's do a kal v'chaimer. If someone that didn't actually steal it, but claims that it got stolen, and we find out that he has it, he has to pay double. So we'll have it. So for 1 second, I skipped. So for sure, someone that actually stole it for sure has to pay double. The Gemara says no. But you can't. You can only learn when you have a kal v'chaimer exactly where your starting point. It's like the water thing. You can't get the water to go higher than where you started from. So what do they call that water table? Is that what it's called? Okay.
You give them one of these.
Give him a trophy. What is it called?
I think it's equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
So maybe not. I think.
So the problem is that we were going to end up with malahalam b'shvua afkam b'shvua. That just like by Tayan Tanas Ganav, it only works with an oath. So too, if we're learning it from a kal v'chaimer from Tayan Tanas Ganav, that a Ganav himself has to pay double, we're going to end up with only if he had taken a false oath is he going to have to pay double, not if we just catch him without an oath. Afkam b'shvua. So the Gemara says, okay, we'll learn it from the verse that we're about to quote, and we're going to explain why, even though the verse says it's only talking about animals, we're going to claim that it's talking about even more. We're going to get this from Nafkalei Meditana de Bechizkiah and learn it from what Chizkiah taught. This is going to take us up to the next page. Then the Gemara is going to analyze what Chizkiah taught, and we're going to get stuck somewhere in the middle of that, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up. So the Tana de Bechizkiah, Chizkiah taught the following. It says, Yemer shar u'gneva v'akol b'chlal. Let me read to you the verse. It sounds similar to the verses that we're talking about, but it's actually not. This is the verse that we were talking about was Im Yimatzei Haganav or Im Lo Yimatzei Haganav. the verse that we're going to quote now was Im Yimatze. This is talking about if a person strikes and kills a thief who is discovered tunneling into his house, not considered bloodshed. The sun shone upon him. That means clear that he wasn't going. Then it's considered bloodshed. The thief must pay full compensation for what he stole. If he has no money, he should be sold to slavery for his theft. Okay, now listen to this verse. If the stolen object is found in his possession, whether a live ox, donkey, or lamb, or any other object, he must pay double. Let me read it to you in Hebrew. Im himatze timatze biyadei hageneva. If the stolen object is found in his hand, this is Shemais 22:3. Whether it's an ox, a mishar, ad chamar, ad seh, gives us a list of 3 animals. Chayim, alive. Shnayim mishalim, has to pay double. Okay. In the end of this Gemara, just so in case we get stuck somewhere in the middle and you don't, it's going to turn into a klal of pratu klal. If we find in his hand the stolen object, klal, chayim, alive, that's another klal, and in the middle we have shar ad chamar ad seh, that we have the prat, the detail. Okay, now the chayim is a little bit not a perfect klal, not a perfect generalization because it's referring to something that's alive. Geneva is going to be referring to everything, any stolen object. Doesn't have to be alive. So it's the klal is like a limited klal. We're going to claim that that's going to follow a certain teaching that's going to accept that.
Is it because those animals would be 4 or 5 times, and then if it's alive?
No, chamar is not 4 or 5. The donkey is not going to be 4 or 5.
No, but the
Other 2. So, but we're going to learn. The Gemara is going to do. Why do we need the Reb Chizkiah? It's Chizkiah. The yeshiva of Chizkiah is going to learn each one as its own teaching. Let's take a look. The Tana de Bechizkiah, Yaimer Sharu Gneva. I told you the end of it, but you have to follow through. It looks like we're doing a klal of prat, or prat to klal. It looks like. It says Yaimer Sharu Gneva. If it only said one item, one detail, and it said Gneva, Bakol B'chlal, everything would have been included. Ilukach, if that's the case, you see Yaimer. 1 second. The detail that you said, which was the shar, that would limit it to only things that are offered on the altar. So I would think only things that are offered on the altar. But what would that include? That would also include the lamb, which is also offered on the altar. What would that include? Seh, that's offered on the altar. So if that's the case, we go to the top of Samach Dalet. When it says actually seh, harei seh amar. But you already said seh by saying Gneva and Shar, which was including everything that could be offered as a sacrifice. Amani Makayim Gneva. So what is the Gneva coming to include? Because that's a generalization. It's coming to include more than just the detail. What's it coming to include? L'Rabbi's Kaldav, it's coming to include everything. Kumar says, Yomer Shar V'seo Gneva V'akol B'chlal. I would have everything. Everything would have been included. It doesn't need to say Chamar. Ilukach, but if that's the case, you see, I would have said, I would have thought Shar and Seh, both of them, when they have the firstborn animal, that animal is brought as a sacrifice. It has the sanctity of a Bechar. I would have understood that this applies, that you have to pay double if it's stolen, to everything that says the sanctity of a firstborn. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to include? Chamar, the donkey. That's also sanctified when it's firstborn. So when the pasuk actually says Chamar, Harei Chamar Amar, we already had that. So why did I have to say it? Hamani Makayim Geneva. So why do I need to say the word Geneva? What's that coming to include? The Rabbi's Kaldavar, it's coming to include everything, even if it's not a live animal. So let it say Shar, Chamar, Gneva, everything would be there. And so what do I have to say? Chayim, alive. I would have thought it's referring to all animals because that's what's common about them. What are you trying to say? Shar balechayim, other animals. So when it says chayim, alive, we already know it's talking about live animals. Mani makayim geneva. So what's the word geneva coming to add? The Rabbi's Kaldavar, it's coming to add everything, even if it's not an animal. So basically what we just did was we have a verse now the Gemara could have said we have it from a verse that a ganav has to pay double, but without chizkiya, wouldn't have known that he has to pay double on things that aren't animals.
So when it says
Now it's telling the
Chaim
chizkiya
is
is
the
teaching
extra, not the.
when
Chaim would have included
Is the
other
riboy,
animals as
right.
well.
it's a ox, sheep, and donkey are specific
Yeah.
animals. When it says Chaim, is that including all
Yeah.
animals?
I would have included all the animals anyway from those specific animals. When it says Chaim, what's it coming to include? So what's the word Geneva coming to include? We think the word Geneva, which is a generalization, is coming to include much more. So that would have included all animals, but it says Chaim, which is all the animals. So Geneva must be including things that aren't animals.
Wow.
Okay. Amar Mar. It's taught Yemar Shar or Geneva. We said, let it just say Shar and Geneva. Gemara asks, Miksiv Shar or Geneva? Does it just let it just say the ox and the stolen item? And that would have included everything. Gemara says, does it say an ox and a stolen item? It doesn't say that. Geneva v'sharu diksiv. It says it the opposite way. It says a stolen item, whether it be an ox, and it says ox afterwards. Okay. Now, what that means is we're dealing with here if it would have said shar and Geneva, it would have been a pratu klal. And pratu klal is coming to include more than the prat. But it turns out that it's a klal of prat. And the rule with klal of prat, the generalization, then the specific, is ein bechlal ala masha befrat. It's a limiting. It's not adding. It's saying that it's limiting. When it comes afterwards and you include another klal, then it's including.
And then prat and klal.
It's two different things. Yeah. Depends where the detail comes in. If it says a detail first and then a generalization afterwards, so the generalization is coming to include more.
So at this point, you think that Chaim still is.
We're not.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. That's not.
Yeah. So the Gemara says v'chitema. Maybe what the Chizkiya meant was ilu nemar ka'amar. If it would have said shar and then Geneva, then I would have learned all of these nice things out of it. But it didn't say that. But we're saying that because it could have said that, that's what it's coming to teach me. And why didn't it say that? That's what it's coming to say. Why didn't it say that? So let's take a look. Ilu nemar kamar. Let's say it was saying ilu nemar shar Geneva. That if it would have said shar Geneva, then I would have included all of this. The Gemara says mimat is amrit. Then how did you conclude with ma prat mefurish? That you're limiting it to the specific. I'll be sure prat. I say bracha already. I think so. I'll be sure prat. Then the the ox would have been a specific uganeva klal. And then the word Geneva, if we're not going to look at it as it actually says, if we're going to say if it would have said, then we should follow through on that thought. And we would say that the Geneva, the stolen item, would be the generalization. Pratu klal, nasa klal, ma'isafala prat, b'shrablu kol mili. We would have included everything. Not just what we said that we would have included everything immediately. We would have included not just things that are brought on the altar, everything. Ella Kedeksiv, it must be that we don't mean to say if the pasuk wouldn't have said it in the order it said it. We're looking at the pasuk as it says it. Ella Kedeksiv Kamri, Geneva Vishar. And at first it says the word Geneva, and then it says the word Shar, which this is called Klal Prat. The Gemara says, if that's the case, Mimat Tisamar Akal B'chlal, and how can you say that it's including everything? It's the opposite. Or another problem, Ma Prat Mefurish. Just like this is specific, something that is, which includes more. What's the rule when you have a generalization and a specific? We would have left with only an ox, those limited items the things that were itemized. which is an ox, a donkey, and a lamb. So Amar Rava says, Tana, I wonder if what it should have said, Ella Amar Rava, but anyway, I felt like an Ella coming.
Yeah.
So
I think I said it without saying it.
do you have any stars in your Gemara that it adds in something or notes? Nothing. Okay. Amar Rava Tana Achayim Kasamachlei. The Tana is.
Here.
You have a star there?
I do.
Point to the Ella Rava. Let me take a look at that. Oh, the Amar Rava. Okay, no. So Amar Rava says Tana Achayim Kasamachlei. The pasuk is referring to the word Chayim. Klal prat klal karmelain. It's coming to tell me a klal prat klal. So it's coming to tell me the generalization, specific generalization. The Gemara says, but that's a problem because the last klal, the generalization which says any animal, is different than the first one which says any stolen item. Any animal is different than any stolen item. Any stolen item is much more inclusive. When it says Hatana, this Tana, the Bei Rabbi Shmuel, this is the Tana the Bei Rabbi Shmuel of the house of Rabbi Shmuel, the Kiagavna Darshi Klali Prati. They're not so specific about Klal Prat. They'll even use a klal that's not perfect, that's not exactly the same symmetrical with the first klal. And this was what it was referring to. This is what it was asking. Why does it need to say imimatzi timatze? What is the pasuk? Yeah, if you find in his hand, that's pasuk Gimel. Yomer shar. Yomer shar gneva v'chayim akol b'chlal. Let it just say ox, gneva, and chayim. And I think what it means is gneva, shar, and chayim, and everything would be included. Because we would have said anything that's similar to the specific, which was the specific davar metaltel v'gufin mamin, like we learned this before. It's a movable item and it has intrinsic value. It's not like a document. But if that's the case, I would have limited. No, it's not just because it has intrinsic value. It's only something that's brought on the altar. Also, anything that's brought on the mizbeach. So, what do you mean to say? You're referring to the lamb. So but then when it adds we already said no because a lamb is also brought on the altar. Amani Makaya Geneva. So what is the Geneva coming to include? That we have a klal prat and klal. L'rabis kol davar. It's coming to include everything. Yomer Geneva b'shar v'seh v'chayim v'kol b'chlal. So now I have Geneva, Shar, and Sen Chayim, and everything would be included. And what do I need the word Chamar? Okay. Ilukain, you see, that would have told me that Ma Prat Mefurish, Davar HaKadosh B'B'Chaira. That would have included things, all of those things that you said, which is a Shar and a Sen. Is referring to things that are consecrated when they're born, if it's the firstborn. Afkal Davar HaKadosh B'B'Chaira. That would include anything. So why did I have to say Chamar? So Kishwaimer Chamar, Are Chamar Amar. It's already said. Question mark. Chamar. Going to bring a donkey. Kishwaimer Chamar, Are Chamar Amar. So we already said Chamar. Amani Makayim Geneva. So what's the word Geneva coming to include? L'Rabbi is called Davar. It's coming to include everything. Okay. So Yoimar Geneva v'Shar v'Seva Chamar v'Chaim v'Kol b'Chlal. Could have said Geneva Shars, the stolen item, the ox, the lamb, and the donkey, and it would have said everything. Why do I need to say if he found it in his hand? So it says it would have told me that only that it's animals. What can you include? Other animals. Because when it says Chaim or Chaim Amar, we already said it. Mani Makayim Geneva. So what is coming to tell me from Geneva? The Rabbi is called Davar. Coming to tell me more. But then why did I have to say the beginning? If you find it in his hand. Ihachi shaper kashalei. Say this is actually a good question. Let me take a look at your Gemara. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Why then do I need the redundant? If being found, will it be found to teach us this law? So thus concludes the Brisa taught in the Academy of Briskia. Okay, so now the Gemara now asks, Ihachi, if the Tana is rightly troubled by this question, since a specific generalization sequence found by the words stolen article, ox, donkey, sheep, and live, suffices to teach us to include all things that are movable. Why indeed do we need the redundant if being found will it be found to teach us this law? In other words, we ended up with an extra limit over here. So what actually do we do with mimatzi timatzi? The Gemara says mishum dislei pircha, because what we said, what Tana Bechizkiya taught, actually has a problem. The rabbis called davar, when it's coming to include everything, mehechi kamaisila. Where are you including everything from? The klala basra, from
Chaim.
From Chaim.
That's the second clause.
But klala gufei Chaim ksivbei. But the klal itself says the word Chaim, and you're coming to include more than the Chaim. So klala prat klal, my kamahanilei. What do you gain from the klala prat klal? If you can't include anything more than what you're left with in the prat. So ila suye kol davar, if it's coming to include anything, a Chaim ksiv, it can't be because it says Chaim, which means bali Chaim in midachrin aloi. Mishum hachi yitzchach mimatzi timatzi. That's why he needs to say mimatzi timatzi to tell me extra things. Okay. Give me 1 second with this. Let me see if we got that right. Now the Gemara asks, Amare, or let's say they said, but these generalizations are two generalizations that are next to one another. Im himatze timatze. Now we're using the himatze timatze to be the klal prat. Okay, so this now on this the Gemara says, Amaravina kedamri marav kol makom shatamayt shnei klaus asmuchim zelazeh hatal prat b'nei avadonim b'chlal prat. Okay. What you do is you take the himatze timatze. You want this back? You take the himatze timatze and you throw in the middle the shor seh and shor chamar seh. Shadi shor bein himatze timatze lasuye mai. When you put the shor in the middle, what's it going to include? Ilasuye b'alei chaim. If it's coming to include alive animals or animals mechaim nafka that I already get from Chaim. It's coming to include things that aren't live, even though it says sure. And we would learn it like this. First, it would coming to include more. Basu, anything that's movable. What's the donkey in between the two himatzi timatzis, if you find? So if it's coming to include things that aren't alive, they already got from Shar, right? And the last one, it's coming to include something that has a sign on it, which that's we learned before. They only pay kefil on something that has a sign. So what do I do with that? Okay, let's leave it right there. Let's leave it at riba.
Oh.
Okay.
Are we on 64?
Let's leave it at riba. Okay. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be in the yeshiva.
Have a good Shabbos, Haley.
Good Shabbos.